He won't power down. He's like Ultron. He just keeps going. Every day, it's something crazier than the next. I made a list. This is all in the last 2 months. I made you a quick list. I will run through it. He paved over the Rose Garden. He's building a golden ballroom at the White House. He's planning a UFC fight at the White House. He cut off Kamala Harris's Secret Service protection. He named himself host of the Kennedy Center.
You know, the authoritarian, the demagogue, it goes away when they go away, and he will go away. And we will, and they don't have anybody that's as charismatic as him. He's charismatic. There's no taking that away from him. He's a television star. He is. He's charismatic. I mean, I don't agree with him at all on anything, but, you know, he was famous from a television.
Trump's administration has generated so much controversy that even well-known comedians like George Clooney and Jimmy Kimmel cannot help but make it hilarious. Why not? It seems like interns who quit up halfway through wrote a spoof of every day. Kimmel has specialized in making fun of ridiculousness. Clooney is also the face of slick criticism in Hollywood. They all view Trump's presidency as a blooper film that is too lengthy for television.
And I think unjustly, this puts them at risk. The President of the United States made it very clear he wants to see me and the hundreds of people who work here fired from our jobs. Our leader celebrates Americans losing their livelihoods because he can't take a joke. He was...
I mean, personally, being targeted by the administration?
Sure, everybody worries about it, but, you know, if you spend your life worrying about things, then you won't do things. You know, we like everybody have a family, and we have a life, and we have and we try to, you know, live and do the things as the best example for our kids.
Please click the bell symbol and subscribe to the channel if you like this video. The blatant spectacle of Trump's public appearances opens a roast. When the president performs his own physical comedy, stumbling across stages, swinging his arms like a broken marionette, and halting theatrically as though awaiting applause that rarely materializes on time, Kimmel doesn't need to come up with new lines. No actor in history has put forth as much effort to miss their mark on cue. Clooney continues. He compares Trump's onstage persona to an amateur audition that miraculously advanced past the first round because the judges were too courteous to make fun of him.
He's going to be a factor for a while. It's so funny because, you know, he was just this knucklehead. I knew him before he was, you know, a president. He was just a guy who was chasing girls. You know, every time you went out, he'd come over and be like, "What's the name of that girl?" You know, that's all he was. And the idea that there's this whole group of people that, you know, that they think he's the champion of, which he certainly can't stand in real life. But, you know, he's gonna play this out for a while, and we'll see where we go with it.
The hair comes next. The hair always. In the political saga, Kimmel handles it as a distinct character, a golden tumbleweed that appears poised to escape with every wind gust. Clooney contrasts the desperate spray and comb routine, which shouts insecurity louder than any policy statement ever could, with his full head of salt and pepper dignity. Not only is the hair awful, but that's not the comedy. The reason is that the U.S. president spends more time honing a gravity-defying swirl than getting ready for international conferences.
There's a rumor making the rounds this weekend that Trump was dead because he hadn't been in front of a camera for a few days. That's how much he's in front of a camera. When we don't see him there, we assume he must be dead. And also, he has mysterious bruising on his hand, which they tried to cover up with makeup. And this cover-up's even sloppier than the Epstein one. How could anyone let him go out like this? I mean, like he was spackled. He had to have done that himself, right? Looks great, sir. No one will notice a thing. The White House claims the reason for these bruises and his big fat elephant ankles is he suffers from a condition known as chronic venous insufficiency, which in layman's terms means he's got a very small venus. He's got an insufficient...
Trump's infatuation with rallies gives Kimmel a field day. Trump clings to his audience no matter what calamity is happening, much like a struggling comic who refuses to leave the stage after blowing a show. Clooney goes on to say that it's like witnessing a shabby lounge act continue to receive standing ovations for the same old performance. The jokes are accurate and not harsh. The rallies serve as Trump's emotional lifeline, a location where cheers cover the gaps caused by eroding confidence.
Able to squeeze Colbert out of CBS, then he turned his sights on me, and now he's openly rooting for NBC to fire Jimmy Fallon and Seth Meyers and the hundreds of Americans who work for their shows who don't make millions of dollars. And I hope that if that happens, or if there's even any hint of that happening, you will be 10 times as loud as you were this week. We have to speak out against this.
Additionally, the policies become fodder. Kimmel calls Trump a home improvement host gone rogue in an attempt to mock his incessant obsession with tariffs, fences, and bans. It's similar to seeing someone on a reality show attempt to use duct tape and ego to erect a fence around the entire world. Clooney interrupts to emphasize how these concepts frequently fall apart due to their inherent inconsistencies. Trump, however, is adamant about portraying them as new innovations.
Center honors. He went to Alaska to bend over for Putin. He sent military tanks into Washington, D.C. He said the Smithsonian focuses too much on how bad slavery was. He called India and Norway to tell them to nominate him for a Nobel Prize. And he cut off funding for pediatric brain cancer research for children. You would think a person who himself has the brain of a child would be in favor of funding pediatric brain care research.
The content speaks for itself when it comes to international relations. Trump's uncomfortable meetings with other leaders seem less like diplomatic attempts and more like an odd family get-together when he was invited but still showed up. Kimmel characterizes the photo shoots as hostage scenarios where world leaders seem frantic to get away. By reminding everyone that presidents are meant to convey stability rather than make other nations unwitting co-stars in slapstick comedy, Clooney raises the roast. Trump's favorite talking point, the economy, is now just another joke. Reminding his viewers of the president's procession, Kimmel as if he had created riches himself. It's that he believed confidence alone could suspend reality. Without discussing Trump's infamous late-night social media binge, of course, no roast of him would be complete. According to Kimmel, the most powerful man in the planet sent these inebriated texts. However, Trump doubles down in the morning rather than apologizing for them.
And it's not just comedy. He's gunning for our journalists, too. He's suing them. He's bullying them. Over the weekend, his foxy friend Pete Hegseth announced a new policy that requires journalists with Pentagon press credentials to sign a pledge promising not to report information that hasn't been explicitly authorized for release. That includes unclassified information. They want to pick and choose what the news is. I know that's not as interesting as muzzling a comedian, but it's so important to have a free press, and it is nuts that we aren't paying more attention to it.
Clooney compares it to witnessing a soap opera play out in real time, with the exception that the main character continues to write his own awful lines. The ridiculous thing is that these letters, which are frequently rife with typos and digressions, have the ability to change international markets, but sound as though they were composed by someone wearing oven mitts. Additionally, there is the incessant demand for flattery. Trump is less like a president and more like a pageant contestant looking for comments because of his ravenous appetite for acclaim. Kimmel makes fun of his insistence on surrounding himself with cue-clapping fanatics. Clooney goes one step further and says that no true leader should require daily affirmations in order to function. They together portray Trump's presidency as a failed therapy session. Incorrect, in which the patient demands continual reassurance and maintains that he has already been cured. With no sitcom laugh track to lessen the blow, Kimmel has no trouble making fun of the overwhelming number of legal issues surrounding the presidency by calling it the busiest courthouse in America. Clooney draws attention to the irony that a man who positioned himself as a business guru now devotes more of his time to maintaining rather than growing his empire.
I didn't think people would vote for someone who was so deeply flawed. I mean, I know Donald Trump. I mean, that's the thing is people, I have his phone number in my phone book. He was the guy that came to the bars and asked me about which cocktail waitress was single. That's who he was.
This is back in the 90s.
Not that long, no, back in the 2000s, quite honestly. And so there's this part of you that just goes, well, that guy shouldn't. But I was wrong, and he was, and our democracy, I believe, paid a price certainly around the world.
Trump's relationship with his own party is also subject to mockery. Kimmel relates it to a problematic marriage in which all parties pretend to be content for the cameras, but are actually hoping for a divorce. Clooney concurs, pointing out that a lot of lawmakers appear to be trapped in a cage, unable to break free from a president who expects allegiance, but seldom gives it. The picture is tragic and humorous at the same time. Adults who are too scared to disagree with a man whose most effective tactic is humiliation in public. Kimmel specifically targets Trump's penchant for exaggeration. Everything is the biggest, best, and most prosperous. Trump appears more like a stark devotee and less like a champion of democracy as a result of his cordial relationships with autocratic regimes. Clooney makes the more profound argument that these alignments damage America's reputation overseas, while Kimmel makes light of the uncomfortable handshakes. It's a biting comedy, mockery that highlights real dangers while being entertaining.
I was in Wyoming, I was in Palm Springs. I even got to be part of a big meeting in Washington, D.C.
Christy?
Well, Mr. President, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to work for you. Mr. President, I invite you to see your big, beautiful face on a banner in front of the Department of Labor.
Thank you for saving college football, by the way. We're all very grateful.
You are the single finest candidate since the Nobel Peace, this Nobel Award was ever talked about. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, I want you to know sometimes when I watch you striding across the White House lawn so confidently, with so much masculinity, I'll admit it, I get sexually aroused. Thank you for breathing life back into my once slumbering penis.
Satire can also be found in environmental policy. Trump's disrespect for. Kimmel jokes about a president who views scientific agreement as a proposal that he can work out because of climate concerns. It's like watching someone toss buckets of water out of a sinking boat while insisting the ship is unsinkable. Clooney continues. The irony here is the contrast between Trump's confident performance and reality, a disparity so large that it virtually begs for mockery. Trump also takes aim at the healthcare industry, which is one of his favorite battlegrounds. Kimmel recalls the incessant assurances of replacement plans that never came to pass, seeing them as legendary animals that no one has ever seen. Trump claims he is under attack from unseen foes while being president. Clooney highlights the ridiculousness of the world's most powerful guy taking the side of the underdog. It seems as though Superman complained about how difficult being Superman is for the duration of the film. The humor strikes a deep chord because it exposes the true fragility of the ego.
Yeah. Look, I never imagined I would be in a situation like this. I barely paid attention in school. But one thing I did learn from Lenny Bruce and George Carlin and Howard Stern is that a government threat to silence a comedian the president doesn't like is anti-American. That's anti-American. And I am so glad we have some solidarity on that from the right and the left and from those in the middle like Joe Rogan.
The epidemic turns into the roast's most sinister yet scathing segment. Kimmel mocks Trump's attempts to appear composed during his rambling, half-baked ideas at press conferences that felt more like game shows. Clooney doesn't spare him either, portraying the reaction as a terrible mashup of spectacle and denial. Although painful, the comedy is essential. It emphasizes how disastrous leadership devolved into yet another political farce. The dynamics of Trump's family are also distorted. Kimmel makes fun of the never-ending stream of family members appointed to public office, as though nepotism were a fundamental tenet of the Constitution. Trump's strange fixation with ratings and audience sizes is the next topic of the roast. Kimmel makes fun of the concept that genuine government is less important than television ratings or rally participation. Clooney emphasizes the absurdity by drawing a comparison between it and an actor who gauges his career success by counting the number of individuals who inadvertently enter the incorrect theater. The jokes expose a president who is dependent on approval and unable to discern between advancement and popularity.
Why would they want someone back who does so poorly, who's not funny, and who puts the network in jeopardy by playing 99% positive Democrat garbage? Who puts the network in jeopardy? You hear that? There's the threat again. This time straight from FCC Biscuit's mouth. He goes, he says, I think we're going to test ABC out on this. Let's see how we do. Last time I went after them, they gave me $16 million. This one sounds even more lucrative. A true bunch of losers. Only Donald Trump would try to prove he wasn't threatening ABC by threatening ABC. And you almost have to feel sorry for the people who work for him, who try to clean up the messes. They've been bending over backwards to say, oh, he never.
Clooney develops the idea of legacy into a comprehensive. A mockumentary is in the works. They joke that long scholarly arguments and dusty archives won't be necessary for historians in the future. They only need to present a highlight reel of Trump's mistakes repeatedly in classrooms to serve as a warning. Imagine showing pupils videos of Trump babbling, waving his arms, and announcing fictitious victory after they have learned about previous presidents with somber regard. There is more entertainment on Saturday nights and less history. By implying that Trump's presidential library will be made up of televisions that continuously play back his biggest gaffes rather than books, Clooney plays into the ridiculousness. Scholarly research centers will be replaced by souvenir stores offering red caps and gold-plated pens that, as his policy states, run out of ink mid-sentence. According to Kimmel, the most well-liked display at the library would be an interactive exercise where guests could attempt tweeting while wearing blindfolds, with outcomes that were identical to the president's own late-night tirades. The irony is scathing. Trump sought statues and symbols of authority, but his true legacy may consist of gags fit for a theme park that have been saved for mockery.
Is a big fan of yours, but he posted in July. Now, fake movie actor George Clooney is getting into the act. He's turned on Crooked Joe. What does Clooney know about anything? Should get out of politics and go back to television. Movies never really worked for him.
I will if he does.
He doesn't know that movies are fake, does he?
I don't think so.
Even the way that Trump's name persists in society is ridiculed. Kimmel recommends it. Will endure more as a warning sign applied to each careless choice than as a proud family crest. Similar to how Waterloo came to represent loss, Clooney sees Trump being used as shorthand in schools for self-inflicted chaos. When someone wishes to explain the quickest route from confidence to collapse, the name itself turns into comedic currency. Returning to the topic of television, Kimmel notes that Trump's fixation on numbers suggests that his presidency may be viewed less as a period of governance and more as a disastrous television series finale. Clooney makes the remark more pointed by saying even while Trump left unresolved cliffhangers, the worst soap operas at least attempted to wrap up their plots. By doing this, they solidify the notion that the sheer number of jokes it inspired will be used to gauge his legacy rather than more conventional indicators of leadership. What ought to have been regarded as solemn governance instead becomes a cultural joke, an example of how unchecked power becomes parroted.